everyone, and welcome back to another roundup. So it's a pretty big set of news. We got CD Projekt Red dropping new Cyberpunk info, Riot actually taking some steps towards moving on from their Neom controversy, then WB Games, a little bit more rumors there, but things still might be looking a bit dicey. And also, Activision Blizzard, they seem to believe they're on the right track, and they certainly do have a financial report that would back that up. And then, of course, a little bit of an update on Fall Guys. There are some hard numbers, and my god, they absolutely dominated the sales. First up, though, and just before we get into Cyberpunk stuff, the thing we're trying to do is push up to 250k. Most of the people who watch this channel, and most channels on YouTube actually, are not subscribed. So if you're not, there's a big red button underneath the watch thing for this video that solves that problem. So thank you for that. Your likes, your watch time helps us out a great deal. It truly is what literally drives the YouTube algorithm. And with that said, let's talk about Cyberpunk. Let's actually start it off with a nice, good story. So a new episode of Night City Wire aired this week, and with that they gave us another surprisingly in-depth look at Cyberpunk 2077. Basically, it kicked off with showing us the different life paths. It was Street Kid, Nomad, or Corpo, and both had like their own, their own backstories and nuances that basically affect kind of just what you're doing in Night City, where your life path will kind of give you like different opportunities. Basically, right, it's the type of thing that I think is great for roleplay because it's a parameter you can have for your character, from a developer's perspective, and that simple choice of whatever you do, they can just make that like, just have even little bits of lamp shading and reflections as you go through the game, as well as the times where, of course, it does matter more. So that all looks actually really engaging, and as somebody who, for that game, like, I want a real good immersive role-playing game experience, that just seems really good. Now, the show, of course, continued, and they showed a little bit of what brought Johnny Silverhand's band Samurai to life. They actually debuted a new song, which is available to stream now, so you can do that, and they promised that the Night City Wire broadcasts will look at radio stations and the game score. Now, on that, gotta say, radio stations in Grand Theft Auto, as an example, are often really quite fun. So having that same level of fun, but doing that, making it feel in universe for this particular world, very cool. So past that, though, one of the main focuses for the show was the weapons, where the Tools of Destruction segment just showed off 5 different weapon categories. There was power, there was tech, smart, melee, and cyberware. And these follow basically, the whole spectrum from guns with traditional ammo to homing rounds, a superheated katana, pretty cool, the now famous mantis blades, and a transforming arm cannon. So certainly, when you're playing V, you're gonna have a lot of just a lot of tricks, a lot of things you can pull out. Seems quite fun. Really, it's the situation with this game, and we were almost going to do a report on how well the viral marketing was going, but just as they've just had little slivers of gameplay be released, they have generated so much hype. At this stage, I truly think that at least for core games, this is going to be one of our biggest sellers ever. I don't know if I've ever seen this amount of hype before a game, so it's pretty damn incredible. They're absolutely knocking it out of the park with their PR campaign, and yeah, I can't wait for episode 3 of Night City Wire. And with that said, let's move on. Riot Games. Last month, Riot caused quite a stir by announcing a new relationship with the Saudi Arabian megacity of Neom. Now, following a pretty strong backlash from observers and their own staff, Riot walked back on their partnership with the city, and they stated that they moved on too quickly, and they pledged to adjust internal processes in the future. Now, it's the sort of thing where, for a lot of people, strike one with Riot is, their heavy ties to Tencent, especially like with what's happening with the Uyghurs right now, which rightfully is something that is entering the public consciousness. It is very good that that's being talked about. And I suppose it's, if there's something that's going to come out of the Blitzchung situation and maybe some of the Riot stuff, it perhaps is that there's a section of the gaming audience that is perhaps a little bit more aware of some of the very, very distasteful bad things that are going on, on our planet. But that's kind of like, for a lot of people, strike one with Riot. And then I think another strike is, obviously all of their, internal problems that, Richard Lewis and many others reported on. But like, this is another strike that they were perfectly okay, it seemed, to go into this when, when the money was there. And, well, this is actually where the words continue to ring hollow from their apology, because there are sources claiming that the people at Riot who brokered the deal with Neom knew it would be controversial, and they deliberately delayed announcing it because because the announcement originally would have coincided with Berlin Pride Week, which is where Riot's European offices are located. And look, here, it's the kind of thing I'd say, even if, that stuff's not really resonating with you, it's just the fact that there's a company who's publicly trying to be really, participating in Pride and all of that stuff, but then as soon as the money comes in, is willing to go against those values. I think that does tell you quite a lot. And I think that's something we should all read into and have a think about because, well, principles are a good thing to have. You should stick by principles and not have them be flexible based on money. And it really seems like that's not the case for Riot, at least in this instance. And it does just kind of let you know, either two things. Riot were perfectly happy to be controversial for money, or just that their management were very isolated from the rest of the company in their thinking. Now, Riot staff were blindsided by this deal, the heavy backlash ensued, and the news here is that late last week, Riot announced that they're going to be forming an internal global deals council and an ethics committee. Now, I would also say, if you need a deals council and an ethics committee to tell you that that was a bad deal to take, you're not really very smart. How did you get to the position you're in? I don't know, seems a bit weird to me. Maybe you can just be a huckster so hard that it does get you to that point. Maybe that is actually what happened. But this Global Deals Council is going to be responsible for formalizing and reinforcing the deal evaluation framework. That's what they said, so there's that. And the Ethics Committee is going to operate separately to that, and it will be responsible for addressing, or assessing even, deals and external relationships, as well as discussing the general direction of the company. And these two groups are a part of a wider transparency initiative in the wake of the Neum controversy. So, look, for the sake of Riot staff, and for the sake of, anybody who's not a big fan of, companies partnering up with, pretty brutal regimes who do pretty darn horrible things, I think it is a win that some changes are happening there. Of course, there's the situation where ultimately who are Riot owned by and what's going on over there that's going to be looming over many people. I don't think we're going to have anything in this story that's going to dissuade any fears there, but certainly that is the news, that is the change that Riot at least has said publicly they're going to make. I do imagine they will actually make that change. As to how much of a difference it makes, though, we're just going to have to wait and see, aren't we? Alright, so next we've got a story that really did bamboozle a fair few. So, after a good few weeks of rumors that we did cover that AT&T were actually looking to offload Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, which is the gaming wing, that means, like Mortal Kombat, Batman, games like that, well, it actually looks like things have got a bit more complicated. So, there was an email sent to staff last week from the new CEO of Time Warner, and that basically said that HBO Max would be the centerpiece of the newly formed networks and studios group, and the WB Games, the gaming division, would be a part of that group. Now, this is where it gets messy, because many outlets actually took that to mean that no, they're not selling WB Games, it's a part of this new group, or this group, so it's not going to be sold, right? So that killed those rumors in the eyes of many. However, as was noted by Game Rant, that actually very much may not be the case, and then Richard Hoeg went on to say quite a bit about that as well. So, the context here is Warner Media is in the middle of a massive restructuring effort. They're basically wanting to lay off all non-essential staff and streamline the hell out of the company, and as a part of that, there, by the way, has apparently been an absolute bloodbath at DC Comics, and that's not me ad-libbing or just saying absolute bloodbath, that's actually a quote, so yes, absolute bloodbath. Now, WB Interactive, which is the legal name for the gaming division, was actually one of the few areas of the company to totally avoid job cuts, whilst the rest of Warner Brothers was pretty much gutted as a part of being brought in line with the Studios and Networks group. And basically, WB Games and DC Comics are oddities. DC were slashed, DC Collectibles is no longer in existence, and that kind of implies that they were being restructured and refocused. But WB Games was actually just kept completely intact. Now, you'd be thinking, if this company is trying to restructure itself and streamline the hell out of all of its units, and there have been, rumors that one of those units is up for sale, well, what would they do? Would they like save that unit and keep it forever? Because if they were, surely what they would do is, streamline it like they're doing for the rest of the company. So, yes, rather than this being a case of AT&T, who owns the whole shebang, them actually taking the sale off the table, it actually looks like what they're doing is trying to preserve WB Games to be as sellable as possible. And this is where virtually legal host Richard Hoeg suggests that AT&T are preserving their asset with the intention to seek out an acquisition partner if they're not already in preliminary talks with one. Now, of course, we do remember from the past that when this rumor first hit the scene, the rumors also said that numerous gaming companies like Take-Two, EA, and ActiBliz were actually in talks. And then quite recently, in the EA earnings call, was it Blake Jorgensen? I think it was him, said that they are like more interested than ever in things like acquisitions. So if a sale did end up happening, it would obviously take months to negotiate, and in that time, a potential buyer would probably not want to see WB Games be gutted. They probably want to see how it works. So yes, AT&T would not want to significantly change how WB Games works to preserve that asset. Yes, their burn rate will be higher for a few months because they're not streamlining it, but at the end of the day, that's not worth sabotaging a potential sale. Now, when the current CEO actually got his job back in April, he was mainly tasked with significantly lowering operating costs. Overall, right, I think the overall AT&T group or whatever is in $152 billion of debt. So, yeah, that's not really ideal. Now, this whole thing actually came just as Rocksteady unveiled their Suicide Squad game. A full reveal is happening at a DC event on August 22nd. Now, if rumors are to be believed, there's a Warner Brothers Montreal Batman game that could be announced there, and also a new Injustice game. So I think we seem to have this position where WB Games, I think it's been a bit more quiet recently. It's clearly the case that AT&T are, the overall goal here is to preserve them, to keep them running. They're now going to have these game announcements, and I do just have to wonder if the overall sort of play there is just to keep them sellable. Now, I'm going to be really honest with you. This is not an area, corporate acquisitions, where I've got any experience or, any sort of insider knowledge. So this is me just trying to think through the thing as best as I can. But yes, this is not a hardcore shutdown that WB Games could be sold to another company. It is actually something that suggests it's actually being preserved to be sellable. Now, as I've said in the past, personally, I think that if anyone was to get this, I think the one of the big companies I'd like to see diversify more would be Activision Blizzard, specifically Activision Publishing. Blizzard are very slow. Activision are very much just reliant on a small number of IPs. And if I was sort of looking to, if you're looking to invest in those, you sort of want to think about what's their long-term outlook and how sort of diversified are they. And certainly with the loss of Destiny, you'd sort of worry there. So maybe an injection of new IP and more studios would be useful there, especially because, as an example, one of the reasons why they terminated their deal, mutually agreed to terminate their publishing deal with Bungie, was that studios like High Noon were actually being taken up in Destiny 2 work, and that actually Activision Publishing had a lack of studios, had a lack of development resources. So maybe getting WB Montreal, getting Rocksteady and a few other developers, not Sucker Punch, that's a totally different studio, NetherRealm is who I meant, for Mortal Kombat. Yeah, that could make sense. But anyway, there you go. That's the news, that's what's going on. A sale is very much still in the cards. Next up, it's money time because it's financial results season, and Activision's quarterly earnings call did reveal just a few juicy things for us. Unsurprisingly, it was another record-breaking quarter for the company, which is, sure to cast a little bit of interesting light on the wage dispute that we've covered, but it was a record quarter. That's not a surprise. Just about everyone in gaming has had a record quarter. So net revenues for Q2 were up to $1.9 billion, up from $1.4 billion in the previous year, with digital channels generating $1.6 billion, up from $1.1 billion the year before. Overall, your key learning there is the numbers are up a decent bit. Now, Activision had 125 million monthly active users for Q2, while Blizzard had a paltry 32 million. And the reason why I say paltry there is because, really, Activision's, if you look a few years ago, they were way smaller than they are now. And it's mobile that has driven Activision Publishing's up so much. COD Mobile. So you think about Diablo Immortal, it's pretty obvious why they want that, because they see that 125 million MAUs and they think, oh, that's Warzone and COD Mobile. Does Blizzard have their version of Warzone and COD Mobile in terms of what those products could do for the MAUs of the business unit? Now, of course, both are dwarfed by King. They're the Candy Crush people with, 271 million monthly active users. Yep. that so many people are playing Candy Crush and associated titles, which is a bit spooky. Now, Activision's highlights focus on the Call of Duty franchise. Unsurprisingly, it's the only bloody one they have. That's not true. They do have more, but it is the big one for them. And in fairness to them, between mobile, Warzone, and Modern Warfare, Call of Duty is extremely strong right now. And then over for Blizzard, well, they reported general engagement increases across World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, and Overwatch. I would imagine that the general there is just, COVID. People want to play some more video games. Now, WoW did get more of a focus there. They were heightening more engagement because of Shadowlands hype and accelerating pre-sales that were at basically the best place they had been in the last decade, and that a whole bunch of that was bolstered by WoW Classic, especially Anchorage being launched. If you're not a World of Warcraft person, basically to anyone in the WoW community, the opening of the gates of Anchorage is like a major event from the game's past, and it's now coming back again. Well, already sort of has came back in Classic, so that's going to be a major touchstone for that part of the WoW community, which obviously will have got more people interested in World of Warcraft. So obviously, they're doing well. Now, they're doing well in a way that's not making, or is at least making some people unhappy, right? Like some of the business practices, the situation with pay that we've covered with Blizzard, but in terms of the raw numbers, they are doing well. And, Bobby Kotick, at the end of the day, he's the CEO of the company. If the company's numbers are all going up, then yes, the perception will be that Bobby is doing a good job. And it is just an interesting and I think enlightening, maybe illuminating thing that Bobby Kotick can, by all of his KPIs, he can be doing an excellent job as CEO and maybe even earning his pay increase in, if you're looking at that purely in like the business sense of things. But then as soon as you move that to consumer facing side of things, the staff facing side of things, it's just enlightening that, the perceptions there differ so much. So I guess think of that what you will. I would say TLDR, yeah, mobile makes a lot of money and so does free-to-play, and those things have been massive drivers for the company as of late. And speaking of CEO pay, well, do you remember back in June, right? There was a investment group that was specifically, now they were both an activist investor, but they were like sort of like an ethical one because it was like pay disparities and stuff that's like a really big part of basically just what they advocate for. But you should know that activist investor in the context of the investing world doesn't mean activist as in, trying to push for some sort of, moral or ethics-based change. An activist investor is basically just an investor who is investing so that they can actually get a bit more power, a bit of a seat at the table so they can do something. So, yeah, it's like the, Peter Singer, activist investor, but also ruthless shark. Is it Peter Singer, Paul Singer, someone Singer? We've also covered them decently recently. But anyway, that's just something you should know. But anyway, to say that again, yes, there was a group who were saying that, yeah, Bobby Kotick and the lot were paid too damn much. I think most of us would agree that the sort of ratio of CEO pay to like the median for staff at the company, not the average, use the median, I would say, that is pretty damn out of whack. And I think by most accounts, it's also pretty much some of the most out of whack that like it's been in history in general. So, yeah, that could be a looming problem for the lot of us. Anyway, they also took on EA last month, that same group, and they urged stockholders to vote against the company's annual say on pay proposal. Now, that vote happened last week, and EA stockholders did indeed vote against it by a massive majority of 171 million versus 60 million for. Now, while that's only an advisory vote, it's rare enough to see like executive compensation plans be rejected like this. Activision Blizzard stockholders, for some contrast, actually voted in favor of the compensation package. So where it did not succeed for ActiBliz, over here for EA, yeah, the stockholders said no and rejected it. Now, should the plan go ahead, then CEO Andrew Wilson's compensation package will jump up from 18.3 million to 21.4 million, while CFO Blake Jorgensen could get up to 19.5 million, up from 9.4 million last year. Apparently, Blake's doing a damn good job if he's going to be getting double the compensation. That seems staggering of an increase. I'd really want to see what the justification for that is. Then also Chief Studios Officer Laura Mealy, I think she could be receiving 16.1 million, up from 6.95 million last year. once again, that's a pretty large pay increase. I would love to know how good of a job she did, and perhaps, what the justification there is. I mean, you could also say that these are people who are just generally doing a good job for their companies, and perhaps it's the situation that it's believed that, other companies could be trying to snipe them. So then, do you get into a situation where your CEO pay is almost like the pay of footballers, where it's just different companies vying for this, limited pool of talent, and then, talent, whatever, and then that, drives the price up. I don't really know much about footballers, but I do know that footballers get, transferred for insane amounts of money, and I wonder if it's like that in the sort of CEO or just, sort of C-suite, trading game that big companies maybe play with each other. Anyway, the stockholders voted against that. They also did, though, vote in favor of a measure to allow them to, quote, act by written consent, though only by a slim margin. And that would mean that it should be much easier for them to have a more unified voting voice. So that could be interesting as we run into the future. But yeah, certainly such a wild amount of money in the table there. Those pay increases are absolutely bloody massive. So I could maybe see a situation where Activision Blizzard's was within the Overton window of what Activision Blizzard people expected it to be, but maybe they saw people with EA getting double the salary, 2.5 times the salary, and just thinking, hang on a second, this is getting a bit silly, what's going on? So there's that. Okay. Another bit of news, Fall Guys. This is more of a good bit of news. Fall Guys, the big hit from Mediatonic and Devolver Digital, I believe, who have came in as the publisher. It is seemingly the world's favorite game right now, and they are still ironing out their server issues, but it has been a huge week. So the publisher, Devolver, have released metrics stating that it has sold 2 million copies on Steam alone, and that's not counting all of the PS Plus copies, which were included in PS Plus. Meaning that's a lot of people. How many PS Pluses are there? I forget. It's probably more than, 20, 30, 40 something million. We'll throw a number on screen for you if there is a more recent number, but it's got to be a lot, think of how many PS4s have been sold. And then in Twitch, they also generated 23 million watch hours, which is quite a lot. So, a crazy amount of Steam sales here, especially considering that anybody who also has a PS4 can just get it for free in PS Plus. So, it's done insanely well. It's sitting at the top of the Steam charts. It's got a 123k concurrent player peak, and it's been consistently one of the highest watched titles on Twitch this week, peaking at more than 520,000 concurrent viewers. So there you go. That is a game that had meme potential, right? And when I say that, Takeshi's Castle, at least if you're in the UK or Ireland or just anywhere where Takeshi's Castle, narrated, of course, by Craig Charles, was a thing, and you just got to watch Craig Charles say, oh, and he's in the drink as just a bunch of, I think, Japanese game show contestants got really injured, anybody who's seen that show and then sees Fall Guys is like, bam, this clicks, I get it. Or maybe people who watched Gladiator or, what's the one called in America, something Ninja Challenge, Ultimate Ninja Challenge, or Ninja Warrior, something, just that genre of show. It's such a perfect translation of something that people understand, mixed in with a format of video game, the Battle Royale, that people now, understand. It is, I think, so perfect in its sort of broad execution as a concept that can easily enter someone's brain, and it can have loads of gifable moments that allow for natural stories to be shared in social media and just interesting, wacky things to happen in the game. Yeah, certainly there's a lot that a lot of game devs can learn from how that actually did grow and spread. So an interesting situation, and also the end of today's show. So if you want to support us, hey, there's a lot of ways to do that. Patreon, you can get, I don't have the loot on me right now. You can get the physical loot. You can also get the daily briefing where all the gaming news, we sort of do our thing. We put it in the Patreon, and that means if you're on the Patreon app, you'll get it there. Also, if you've got an email account, it'll be in your inbox. So yeah, while you're having your breakfast or whatever it is with time zones, you'll get the gaming news all just boiled down into one handy place for you. So there's all that stuff we do in Patreon, and of course the likes, the subs, all that good stuff does help us out in our mission quite a bit. So that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.